Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic video. Hope everyone's doing good. It is a chilly Thursday morning at about 9:48. Weather has been so strange lately. It got super cold yesterday. I was at work. I work part-time at the Montessori school, and usually when I'm there, we usually have the kids outside for most of the time, most of the day. It's just a lot easier for the kids to kind of decompress and to run around and have fun, as opposed to being in a relatively big room. And we're usually out during the winter. It gets a little cold sometimes, but the weather had been really nice, since we're way into spring here in 2023. But then last night it got really cold, and then yesterday at work it got super cold. It actually started snowing, and we had some hail. It was like totally bizarre, and we weren't outside very long because everybody was freezing. So we ended up going inside, and it was crazy. And I had rehearsal last night, and it got down to the 30s last night. I couldn't believe it. I came home, it was freezing. I actually had to turn the heat on in our practice space. And then when I got home last night after practice, had to turn the heat on, and now the heat's on now. Super weird, super weird. But hey, that is life, I guess. So yeah, thanks again for people who are supporting this channel. I am always trying to think of new ideas and trying to move things forward and change things up a little bit. Looking forward to trying to do some more interview segments. It takes a lot of time to line up guests for shows for the interview segments, especially with where I'm trying to get this channel to be. I'm trying to elevate that part of it to a higher point. So my goal has been to try to get folks directly involved with a lot of these classic horror films, and I'm getting there. I had a really great show where I had one of the great actresses from Black Christmas, and that was super fun. Had some technical issues in the beginning, so we had a late start, but it was awesome. She was a fabulous guest, and really interesting, super fun, super cordial, and it was a blast. And so I'm trying to do my guest for that show for Black Christmas was the fabulous Lynn Griffin, and she was awesome. So, and when I did that show and I put that show together, it was one of those things of where I had just discovered that movie. It was a movie I had heard a lot about, and I always heard that it was really a very important movie for the horror slasher exploitation genre, if not the most popular, or the most popular, well, not the most popular, maybe that might be a strong word, but probably the most, arguably the most important movie for that genre. Because I feel like Black Christmas definitely, I've only seen it once, and again, it was something I have no idea why I never saw it before, but I bought it on a whim, and I was completely blown away by it. And I do feel, especially since I've seen it now and I own it, I definitely feel like that movie is probably the most important movie in the slasher genre, just because of it serves as like a blueprint and a model for everything that came out around that time period. And that movie, Black Christmas, came out in 1974. So that was pretty early on in the slasher film genre, which is my favorite. And that movie really, influenced so many directors, I feel, and especially one of the most iconic movies and franchises, and as well as directors in the horror franchise and the slasher franchise, the John Carpenter and the Halloween franchise, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, horror franchise that there is. So, and as well, it went on to influence all kinds of other films that came out around that time, and Black Christmas was a Canadian independent horror film, and of course that really influenced My Bloody Valentine, which was also Canadian, that came out a few years after that, which is one of my all-time favorite slasher movies. And I've been, very familiar with that movie. I grew up watching that movie. I bought that fairly recently, last year on Blu-ray, 4K, and I've done I did a show on that. That movie I was very very familiar with, and also huge fan of David Cronenberg, who was also a Canadian director, horror director, and so it was an amazing time. And that movie really, I think slasher films, technically there were films that could be considered to be slasher films that came out before Black Christmas, which came out in '74, that had like those characteristics of like the masked killer, the areas or scenes in the story where there's a group of teenagers who get picked off one by one. There's an isolated location like a campground, a cabin in the woods, or a house, or some kind of isolated environment, and that also entails scenes of sexuality, so, and gore, of course. So, but Black Christmas really, I feel, was an elevated version of all of those characteristics, where it really serviced all those things together in a way of where it acted, like I said, as a blueprint. And that movie went on to inspire, probably hundreds of movies after. So, yeah. So I'm looking forward to doing more shows where I can have guests that are, that are a part or connected to these amazing films. So, but obviously that takes a lot of time. That interview actually with Lynn Griffin came together pretty easily. I was really surprised just because of the circumstances of where I literally had watched Black Christmas on Blu-ray, and it was a few weeks ago that I bought it it was my first time seeing it, and I was watching the special features. There's hours of special features on it. It's a really great edition on Blu-ray, and there was all of these great interviews and documentaries about Black Christmas on it. And there was a really cool interview with Lynn Griffin on there, and she was like really candid and really just open about the whole experience, and it was really great. And she basically said, she does all of these conventions. She's very active. She, uses her social media to connect with people, to do podcasts and all of these different things. So literally after I watched that interview, I, and I think I was watching it pretty late at night. It was like 1 o'clock or something like that in the morning. I looked her up on Facebook, and I found her right away. And then I sent her a message, and the next day she got back to me, and she seemed to, and I just said, about what I had, this proposed idea of maybe setting up an interview segment with her, and she got right back to me. And then the next day she gave me her email, her contact info, about setting up like a definite time and all that kind of stuff. So we did that, and then that weekend, that Sunday, we did the interview, and I was amazed at how quickly it came together. I have, I've mentioned before, I'm kind of an idiot when it comes to technology, so I had some problems. Well, there were also problems around the show in the beginning because of where I live. The connection here in Northport, Maine, is kind of wonky. It's not the best place to, if you have to do business or work that involves a computer. It's the connection's a little bit wonky here. So I was losing, when I was set up to go, I was losing the connection, and it kept going in and out. and it was pretty frustrating. So I finally had to I actually did the video at a different location. I actually went to my parents' house, and they live about a mile away. And for some reason, the connection is a little bit stronger there. So I actually had to go there and set up my stuff, and then do the interview there. And then finally it worked. But we had like a late start. We got, we were about, I got a late, like a half hour late. We started a half hour later than what we had set. But luckily, it came together, and and it's something I just need to get more comfortable doing, especially on the technical side. But I thought the interview came out really great for what it was. So I'm looking forward to. That's where I want to be, and that's where I want to go as far as interview segments for this channel. I really want to pull in people that are definitely that are or definitely part of the genre that I love and the films that I love. So stay tuned for that. And obviously, that was kind of a freak incident because of how quickly it came together, and it just happened within a couple of days or less than that, and we were able to actually just do it. I've had experience trying to line up some other guests that didn't really work out so well because of scheduling or whatnot. I had a previous guest scheduled, and we never were able to do the video because the scheduling just seemed to be really hard. So obviously that's going to be the biggest hurdle, aside from my technical limitations. But that's going to be one of the biggest hurdles moving forward, especially with certain actors and actresses that I'm trying to get in contact with. But so it will take some time and some patience and some focus. But that's kind of where I want to go and where I want to be as far as those segments. Those segments, the interview segments, are my favorite part of doing this channel by far, and I really enjoy it. I learn a lot when I do it, and just being, not only on the technical side of trying to be a host of a show and trying to be an interviewer, that's a lot there, and that's a lot to that entails, and there's a lot of skills to learn around that. So I learn a lot from that from those aspects, but then also just being a huge fan and a huge nerd around these films, I love it. So, and I always get something. I always get some kind of new perspective on that particular film. So very, very cool. So the other day I did a show. Yesterday I did a show on this collection. I bought this really awesome collection at Goodwill. I don't usually buy DVDs. I pretty much try to focus on Blu-rays. But every now and then I come across DVDs that are just a steal. And they have just an amazing assortment of movies, or I'm just blown away by it. And typically when I go to Goodwill in Rockland, they have a really great used Blu-ray selection. A lot of the times I've bought movies there too that were not used. They're still sealed. But most of the time they're used, but they're really, really cheap. And I typically buy the more kind of big budget Hollywood films there. They have a really great selection. So that's typically what I end up doing when I go there. And every now and then I'll find a movie in my travels that's on DVD that is a really good edition. I got one really great edition that I bought on DVD, which I haven't watched yet. I have seen the movie a bunch of times and I love it. Is Terry Gilliam's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas with Johnny Depp, and it's the film about Hunter S. Thompson. I bought the DVD version of it, but it was the Criterion collection, and it comes with a bonus disc, and it's an amazing package. It's DVD, but I bought it because it's like, it's Criterion. Criterions are very expensive, especially Blu-rays or 4Ks. So I bought it. I just bought it anyway and very much looking forward to watching that movie. And I bought this too. This is bonkers crazy. I got it for $1, and it's a collection. It's a Midnight Monster movie series, and it's a collection of all of these super low budget werewolf horror exploitation movies. All three of these movies, and it comes with 3 movies, and it was for $1. And I have never seen any of I haven't seen any of these movies before, so I was super excited. And they're wicked old school. I did a show yesterday on a werewolf in a girls' dormitory, and that came out in 1962, and that was a super cool, ultra low budget horror exploitation movie. I really loved it. I've never seen it before, and that quality, the quality of the video, is actually pretty good. It's all black and white. It's from 1962, but it's actually really good quality. So, and today's show is going to be on Werewolf vs. the Vampire Woman, which came out in 1971. This film is yet another one I have never seen before. And it came out in 1971, and the thing that was so cool about this, I started watching it last night, and I'm a huge Paul Naschy fan. He was a Spanish actor, Spanish director. He also produced lots of films, and he was involved. He was a writer, probably most well known as an actor, but he was an icon in the world of horror exploitation in the 60s and 70s and even the late 50s, I believe. But he made films all the way up into the 80s, and I think early 90s was when he kind of stopped making films. But I'm a huge fan of Paul Naschy. He's one of my favorite actors and figures in the world of exploitation. And when I started watching this movie last night, Werewolf vs. the Vampire Woman, I was like, no shit, is that Paul Naschy? And Paul Naschy was the star of this movie. And I'm a huge, like, again, he's one of the greatest, he's one of my favorite actors in general, but he's definitely one of the greatest figures in the world of horror exploitation. So many movies he was involved in as an actor, and he also directed quite a few movies. Incredible, just an incredible presence on the screen, on the big screen. Really, really talented guy, and I I was super excited. The quality of the Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman on this edition is not very good. Unfortunately, it's kind of terrible, but it was still such an awesome experience. I'd never seen this movie before. I'd heard about it, and I'm still psyched that I bought it. I'd still watch it again, even though the quality of the transfer is really bad. It's kind of like, I don't know, maybe like a copied version of VHS, of like a bad VHS onto digital. But it's still worth having. It's an amazing movie. I was blown away by it. Paul Naschy is mostly well known. He did all kinds of horror films and all kinds of exploitation movies, as well as acting and as well as directing. But he's most well known for his portrayal of the werewolf or the wolfman. He has always been, I've seen lots of interviews with him, and he was a huge star in Spain during those decades, especially in the exploitation world. But he was obsessed with like Lon Chaney, who played the original Wolfman. He was really obsessed. His main influences were the classic Universal monsters, and he's most well known for his portrayal of the Wolfman in a whole series of these exploitation movies. And I think, for as far as an actor who took on that role as playing a werewolf or the Wolfman, I think he's definitely the best. The Beast and the Magic Sword, I think, is just incredible, just a masterpiece. Probably, I haven't seen all of his movies, but that is probably my favorite movie. That movie is just incredible. I have that on Blu-ray, 4K, and I've done a show. I did a show on that. He also did a film that I really love a lot called The Howl of the Devil, which was a little bit of a movie, that came out a little bit later in his career, but he was the director of that movie. And that movie's pretty epic. That was the first Paul Naschy movie I'd ever seen, but again, so many great films. And this movie is super awesome. And the premise of it is basically exactly what the title says. He basically, Paul Naschy plays the Wolfman, and he is kind of pulled into this situation where he's trying to protect his family from this countess, this female vampire who has this layer of other female vampires. And it's epic. Like, it's so good. There's all of these amazing sequences, particularly around the vampires, where it's shot in this really slow motion framing, and it's incredibly eerie and atmospheric. It's pretty magical. It's super spooky, and there's a couple of scenes in it that I think are kind of bone chilling, as far as the imagery of the vampires. And there's a few scenes of where they're seducing these other people or seducing these women. Definitely has a sleazy factor to it, and it's hypnotic, and it's really creepy, and it's really scary. And the way it's shot is just amazing. It takes place in this really kind of gothic looking kind of castle. Just awesome. And it has this incredible epic battle scene at the end between the head vampire and Paul Naschy as the Wolfman. And it's awesome. And he's incredible in it. The kills in it when he's attacking people are just awesome. And again, the reason I love Paul Naschy is, like, he personifies the Wolfman when he's on the big screen. He is just so 100% present, and he's so intense, and he's so physical. He, as far as I know, he did all of his own stunt work when he would do a lot of these films, and he's just got this physicality and this intensity that is just so awesome around his portrayal of the Wolfman, unlike anything else. And this film was also is a Spanish film. And again, it came out in 1971, and it's just one of those things when I realize how old this film is and just how amazing it is and how timeless it is. Even though it's, super low budget, it's got all the classic tropes of being an exploitation movie. The acting is at times isn't great. It's a little bit all over the place, but it's so awesome. It's super campy, but the kills are awesome. The atmosphere is so awesome, and I love. It has some really original ideas, like seeing, these two kinds of iconic monsters. The vampire doing battle with the classic werewolf monster is so iconic, and it's so well done, and the story is actually really great. I was again, I never seen this before. There were two directors for this movie, and this was a Spanish film. Leon Kilmasky and Carlos Ullard, and so that's interesting. There are two directors on this film, and this came out in 1971, and of course stars Paul Naschy, the iconic actor, Barbara Capel, Patty Shepard, Gabby Fouche, and Andres Rizzino, and Louis Gasper. And yeah, just so awesome. I definitely, again, like I said, the quality of this is not very good. It's kind of terrible, but the movie is just so damn good that I totally enjoyed it, even though it was at times, because of the transfer is so rough, it's actually kind of hard to see what's going on. But the movie was so freaking good that I would watch it anyway on this DVD copy, or this with this collection. But I can only imagine what this must look like to get, if I was able to get this on 4K or Blu-ray. So this will definitely be a movie I will get if I see it, come across it. And I'm sure Paul Naschy's films, again, he's in the underground. He was a very, very popular actor and person in the industry, or figure in the industry. He was also, well known, I think, to a degree outside of the exploitation world, because he just had so many projects going on, sometimes 2 or 3 movies a year, and he wore so many different hats in the industry You know, he even, I believe at one point he even was involved with practical effects in films too. The practical effects in this movie too are just super awesome. It's really gory. The atmosphere, again, like I said, the atmosphere for me, for most movies, pretty much all movies, if the atmosphere is really great and it just has this like you know, this thing of where you feel like you can taste it, that's a selling point. Even if, you know, the other things are not as great, you know, maybe the story or the editing or the acting or even the direction. But if it has this kind of thing where it transports you because of the atmosphere, you know, 99% of the time I'll really enjoy that movie. And this movie is all about that. Even though I think it is really actually well directed, very well acted, and it's a really cool story. Very interesting. You know, again, super campy and silly and goofy at times and sleazy, but I love it. I love it. So, yeah, amazing movie. 1971, Werewolf First, The Vampire Woman, starring the great and wonderful Paul Naschy. Definitely check it out, especially if you're a werewolf fan. He, I only discovered Paul Naschy in the last 2 or 3 years, and I have talked about before when it comes to, you know, quote unquote monster movies. I'm a huge vampire movie fan, huge Dracula fan. There's so many. There's like thousands of like vampire movies out there that exist, and also Dracula movies. You know, I did a big show where I reviewed all of the Hammer horror films starring Christopher Lee as Dracula, which is, you know, that was my introduction to Dracula as a kid, and those remain to this day to be some of my favorite movies. But I've always felt that there's something about the werewolf that I always thought was just uh, more fun and engaging, and I've always, you know, been more attracted to a really good werewolf movie over most other monster movies. Werewolves, I definitely, you know, it's I look at the tier of like of how I would rate those kind of monsters, or like even say the universal monsters, where a lot of these things all came from. You know, uh, the werewolf, and then Dracula, and then probably like Frankenstein right behind it. You know, probably my favorite werewolf movie, or I should say, my favorite werewolf movie of all time is The Howling, and yeah, I love that movie to death. I don't think I've done a show on that, but that will be something I will do. But yeah, so it's always been that thing for me, and there has not been as many. There are quite a few, uh, but in comparison, nowhere near as many genre werewolf movies compared to say vampire movies. But so awesome. So this is Jason Dean. Thanks again for your support. Keep the comments coming, and we will see you next time. Peace.